All right, guys. So today I have the wonderful pleasure of interviewing Jonathan. Jonathan, we've been planning this interview for a little bit, but I'm glad we finally got to it, brother. So first off, happy Friday to you.
Yep, same to you. Appreciate you taking the time.
I appreciate you taking the time. So let's jump right into it. So what is it that you were doing before you jumped into the recruiting space?
I actually was running my own tiny car dealership. So I was a car dealer. I had like 3 or 4 cars on my lot, and I was doing that full time.
Wow. Okay. So
Right.
dealing car. Okay. So
Completely different industry.
yeah, totally different industry, right? Wow. So quite the pivot from that. So I guess then no recruiting experience or nothing
None.
direct.
I watched your videos and learned from you, and then my sister has been a great help as well. She has been in the industry for like 8 years. So
Mm,
I took those two combinations and was done selling cars at that point.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I would imagine so. And I'd imagine you want to kind of pivot out of that pretty quickly too. So let's see here. So I guess kind of in your first from the get-go when you just kind of got started, how
Mhm.
many contracts were you able to secure? Um,
I would say
with
the first like month or so, not one or two, nothing crazy.
okay, so one or two contracts, but were those decent contracts? Like, what kind of niches were we talking here?
Sure. It started off small. It started off with manufacturing, like a local manufacturer here. I'm based out of North Carolina.
Hmm.
So a manufacturer here, a manufacturer there led into, I got one that was in construction, and then it just kind of expanded from there.
Gotcha. Okay, beautiful. I like it. And so those were pretty quick. So did you just kind of apply the methods and get going? And, I mean, obviously you've been an entrepreneur because you had the car dealership and all that. So then you just kind of flipped and applied these methods and started getting clients. So I guess that's really awesome. Let's talk about something that a lot of people want to know about, all the time, which is the money, right? So
Right.
with the contracts that you secured, and let's just even fast forward it. Let's say like, first like 4 to 5 months in
Mhm.
recruiting, ballpark, like, from the contracts you were able to get, let's say how much revenue were you able to acquire?
Total, well, I can say I started full time last August, so August 2022. So what's that, 7 months now?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
about 7 months.
time flies. But
It does.
since August, I've signed 16, 17 contracts, and right now our pipeline is a little over 300,000.
300K in about just 6, 7 months. That's
Yep.
beautiful. I love it. I love it. So obviously it got you out of the car dealership business. So
Right.
you were able to, cash collect on many of your contracts. And so let's break it down into placements, I guess. Has it been volume for you, a lot of placements, or has it been kind of like sniper, you know?
Yeah, I would definitely say more of like the sniper approach. I personally avoid the smaller placements, any type of hourly. I try to avoid altogether, just from my experience. It's harder to fill those roles, but for me personally, it may be different from someone else. They may have a completely different experience,
Mhm.
but it's also harder to. For I provide a 90-day guarantee, and I want my candidates to stay those 90 days, or I'm filling the role twice.
Sure.
So I try to target roles. I don't really work on anything with less than a $75,000 a year salary. So
Okay,
it's
gotcha.
75,000 plus plus plus.
Yep. So you mark it out as, hey, I'm not touching this unless it's gonna net me this fee, basically, because you're looking at, $75,000 salary and you already know what you're gonna charge pretty much. So you're like, hey, I'm gonna make X amount of money or I'm not doing it.
Right, because then you take into account the time, energy, effort, and then opportunity cost. If I'm going to work on a $12 an hour role while I'm only one person now, I don't have a whole team.
Hmm.
That $10 an hour role is taking time away from $120,000 a year salary I could be working on.
Right. Completely. Yep. 100%. That that's going to get you a way bigger paycheck
Right.
out of that. Well, we don't say paycheck, just a check because you're an
Right.
entrepreneur that runs a business.
Right.
You know, what would you say, I guess, to anyone that's kind of looking to do what you've done? I mean, at this point, you've escaped the 9 to 5, definitely. You know, you did that with the car dealership, I guess, really, but even that you probably didn't love, but it seems that recruiting is pretty much here to stay for you.
Yeah.
Would that be accurate?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to change
Yeah.
anything soon. When I knew I wanted to kind of go this route, when I closed my car dealership, I actually got a recruiting job with Deloitte, full
Mm,
time contract role. And my advice to people would be to really try to take the emotion out of the decision. If you've worked a 9 to 5 for 10, 15, 20 years, and you're struggling to kind of make that leap, I would just suggest take the emotion out of it and just look at it purely logically. Like if you have, let's just say $100,000 role, which is nothing crazy. They're all over the place.
hmm
If you make one placement, what will that equal in terms of your current hourly rate or salary? So if you're making $8,000 a month gross before taxes, and that one placement would pay you X amount, well, you could make, and this is what I did in my head,
hmm
I could make one placement every 2.73 months, and it'd be the same as my hourly rate wage working 40 hours a week.
Yes.
So for me, it's just taking the emotion out of it and just look at it logically, look at the numbers. Now, if you're making $500,000 a year working your 9 to 5, it may not make as much sense. But I was making on a contract $48 an hour at Deloitte,
Yep.
so which is still great. But even at that point, I looked at the numbers and I was like, well, if I did terrible and only filled one role every 3 months, I would make the same as I'm working 48 hours a week.
Yeah. Yeah. And that
To
ain't just gonna
make sense of that.
fly. Yeah. Yeah. There are those of us out there that want more for ourselves.
Right.
And, and we will get it. So yeah, that's an exercise we go through with all of our students, like looking at, your past, and talking about, okay, well, what would it take basically to replace your current monthly take home?
Right.
And, if the answer is, well, one placement on a really low fee,
Mhm.
I mean, what are you doing? You know what
Right.
I mean? What are you doing?
It's
Why aren't
opportunity
you?
cost at that point.
What's that?
It's opportunity cost at that point. You're for me and how I spoke to myself, I would say, well, I'm wasting my time. Why am I spending 3 months when I can make one placement and make the same amount? Actually, more because I'm paying less taxes because now that I'm an entrepreneur, I write off all the expenses.
Right. Exactly. Now that you're structured as an entity, you write off all the expenses, you
Right.
collect that money, and then you are able to offset those taxes. So you don't get excited about that, $3,000-4,000 return at the end of the year. You're just figuring out how to offset, which is
Trying
way
to limit
better.
what I owe.
Yep, exactly. Well, man, I think you sent a really good message to a lot of people today, that are going to watch this, and anyone who watches this, can kind of understand exactly where Jonathan's trajectory came from, right? Logic, looking at everything objectively, understanding, hey, what am I making right now? What could I make, right? And that's what made you make the leap, right? And
Worst case scenario, you make one placement a month, and you're probably, for most people, you're going to be making more money.
right, yeah, and the worst case is that you're breaking even, or
Right.
even
And
then,
it's hard
but
to do that. It
right.
really,
Yep. Yep. If you follow everything that you're supposed to be doing, it's hard to do that. Yeah. It's hard to lose. It's hard to literally lose like that. So yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on here for a little bit and chatting with me. And we'll chat again sometime real soon. But definitely thank you for taking the time here on this one.
yes, sir. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Anytime.
Absolutely. All right.